Have you ever lived in someone's shadow so long that you forgot what your own looked like? That was my life for 22 years. Always the ordinary daughter next to Emily, the extraordinary one. My parents would watch her solve complex equations at age 7, speak 3 languages fluently by 10, and navigate social situations with an almost unnatural grace, and they'd exchange those looks. You know the ones, the satisfied, knowing glances that parents share when they think their children aren't watching. "She's more like us," they'd whisper, as if it were some cosmic compliment I'd never understand. I used to think it just meant Emily was smarter, more accomplished, more everything that I wasn't. I accepted it the way you accept that some people are born to be stars while others are meant to watch from the audience. But acceptance doesn't make the sting any less sharp, and resentment has a way of growing in the spaces between family dinners and graduation ceremonies where only one daughter gets the spotlight. Everything changed on a Tuesday morning in October when 3 black SUVs rolled down our quiet suburban street in McLean, Virginia, and my world exploded into 1,000 pieces I'm still trying to put back together. But before we begin, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and tell us where you're listening from. I was supposed to be at Georgetown University that Tuesday, sitting through Professor Martinez's tedious lecture on international relations. Instead, I was home with what I'd convinced myself was food poisoning, but was probably just another bout of the anxiety that had been plaguing me since senior year started. The pressure of living up to Emily's legacy, even at a different university, was suffocating. Emily had graduated summa cum laude from Harvard at 19. I was struggling to maintain a B+ average at 22. Our house sat on a tree-lined street where the biggest excitement was usually Mrs. Henderson's aggressive holiday decorations or the Johnsons' ongoing battle with the HOA over their fence height. So when I heard the rumble of multiple engines outside my bedroom window, I figured it was just construction crews or maybe a moving truck. The view from my second-floor window told a different story. 3 identical black SUVs were parked in our driveway and along the curb. Men and women in dark suits moved with military precision across our lawn, their earpieces glinting in the morning sun. One of them, a tall woman with steel-gray hair pulled into a severe bun, stood at our front door with what looked like official paperwork in her hand. My blood turned to ice water. I'd seen enough movies to know that federal agents don't show up at suburban homes for friendly visits. But this was my family, boring, predictable, completely ordinary. Dad worked as an accountant for a mid-sized consulting firm. Mom taught high school chemistry. Emily was in her final year at MIT, probably buried in some lab working on her thesis about neural networks or quantum computing or whatever genius-level project she'd chosen this semester. What could the FBI possibly want with us? The doorbell rang once, sharp and authoritative. Then came the knock, not the polite tap of a neighbor borrowing sugar, but the firm, measured rapping that demanded immediate attention. I crept to the top of the stairs, my bare feet silent on the hardwood. Mom's voice drifted up from the foyer, higher pitched than usual. "Good morning. How can I help you?" "Mrs. Sarah Chun?" The woman's voice was crisp, professional. "I'm Special Agent Rebecca Morrison with the Federal Bureau of Investigation. We have a warrant to search these premises in connection with an ongoing investigation." The silence that followed was deafening. I pressed myself against the wall, my heart hammering so hard I was sure they could hear it downstairs. I don't understand." Mom's voice cracked. "What investigation?" "Ma'am, we're going to need you to step aside." "Is anyone else in the house?" "My husband is at work, and my youngest daughter is at school." The lie rolled off Mom's tongue so smoothly that it took me a moment to realize she was talking about me. Why was she lying? Why didn't she want them to know I was here? "And Emily Chun? Your older daughter." Another pause. Longer this time. "Emily is at MIT. She's in Boston." "Actually, ma'am, we have reason to believe she's here. We've been monitoring her digital footprint, and her phone last pinged at this location." My stomach dropped. Emily's phone was here? When had she come home? And more importantly, why hadn't anyone told me? The sound of multiple footsteps entering our house made me scramble back to my room. I locked the door, a useless gesture, but it made me feel marginally safer, and grabbed my phone with shaking hands. I tried calling Emily first. Straight to voicemail. Then Dad. Also voicemail. The house filled with voices, Agents calling out room clearances, the sound of drawers opening, papers rustling. They were searching everything, and I had no idea what they were looking for. 20 minutes later, there was a soft knock on my bedroom door. "Miss Chun, this is Agent Morrison. I need you to open the door, please." I considered my options. The window led to a 15-foot drop onto concrete. The bathroom had no other exit. I was trapped. "Just a minute," I called out, quickly pulling on jeans and a sweatshirt over my pajamas. When I opened the door, Agent Morrison stood there with a younger male agent. Her expression was neither kind nor unkind, just professional in a way that made my skin crawl. "I thought you were at school," she said. "I'm sick." It wasn't entirely a lie. "I see. Well, I'm going to need you to come downstairs and sit with your mother while we finish our search." The living room looked like a tornado had hit it. Books pulled from shelves, couch cushions askew, family photos examined and set aside. Mom sat rigidly on the edge of her usual chair, her hands folded so tightly in her lap that her knuckles were white. She looked up when I entered, and for just a moment, I saw something in her eyes that I'd never seen before: fear. Not just worry or concern, but genuine, bone-deep terror. "Sweetheart," she said softly, "are you feeling better?" I nodded mutely and sat on the couch, trying to make sense of the chaos around us. "Mrs. Chun," Agent Morrison said, settling into Dad's recliner without invitation, "we're going to need to ask you some questions about your daughter Emily's activities over the past 6 months." "I don't know what you mean." "Emily is a student. She studies, she goes to class, she works on her research projects." "What kind of research?" Mom hesitated. "I'm not entirely sure. Something with computers and artificial intelligence. She doesn't really discuss the technical details with us." Agent Morrison exchanged a look with her partner. "Mrs. Chen, are you aware that your daughter has been in contact with individuals flagged by the Department of Homeland Security as persons of interest in ongoing cybersecurity investigations?" The color drained from Mom's face. "That's impossible. Emily wouldn't. She's not involved in anything illegal." "We're not saying she is. But we need to speak with her to clarify her role in certain activities that have come to our attention." "What activities?" I found my voice finally. Both agents turned to look at me, and I immediately regretted speaking. "Miss Chen, what do you know about your sister's work at MIT?" "Nothing really. She's always been secretive about her projects. Says they're too complicated to explain." Even as I said it, I realized how inadequate that sounded. Emily had been secretive about everything lately, not just her schoolwork. Agent Morrison nodded as if this confirmed something. "When was the last time you spoke with Emily?" I had to think about it. "Maybe 3 weeks ago. She called to wish me luck on midterms." "And she didn't mention coming home?" "No. She never comes home during the semester unless it's a holiday." More significant looks between the agents. The younger one, Agent Torres, according to his badge, leaned forward. "Mrs. Chen, we have surveillance footage showing Emily entering this house yesterday evening at approximately 8:30 p.m. Her car is currently parked 2 blocks away on Maple Street." "Where is she?" The question hung in the air like a loaded gun. Mom opened her mouth, closed it, then opened it again. "I don't know," she whispered. But I could tell by the way her eyes darted toward the ceiling, toward Emily's old bedroom, that she was lying. The search continued for 3 hours. They went through everything. Every drawer, every closet, every inch of our house that had been my sanctuary for 22 years. I watched strangers rifle through family photo albums, examine my mother's recipe cards, and bag various electronic devices as evidence. Evidence of what? They still wouldn't say. Around noon, Dad came home. I heard his car in the driveway, followed by raised voices outside. When he finally entered the house, flanked by 2 agents, his face was ashen. "Sarah!" He looked around the destroyed living room until his eyes found Mom. "What's happening?" "They're looking for Emily," Mom said quietly. Dad's expression shifted in a way I couldn't quite interpret. It wasn't surprise, exactly. It was more like resignation, as if he'd been expecting this moment for a long time. "Sir, we need to ask you the same questions we asked your wife," Agent Morrison said. "When did you last see Emily, Chen?" Dad sat heavily on the couch next to me. His hands were trembling slightly. "She called last week. Wednesday, I think." Called from where? Boston. Her dorm. Mr. Chen, we have cell tower data showing Emily's phone in this area for the past 18 hours. We also have traffic camera footage of her car. Are you sure you haven't seen her? Dad looked at Mom. Something passed between them, the kind of wordless communication that comes from 25 years of marriage. Then he did something that made my world tilt sideways. He started crying. I'd never seen my father cry. Not when his mother died. Not when he lost his job during the recession. Not even during the sappiest movies that made Mom tear up. But here he was, shoulders shaking with quiet sobs, and I had no idea why. She's not here, he said finally. But you already know that, don't you? Agent Morrison's expression didn't change. What we know, Mr. Chen, is that your daughter has been involved in activities that pose a potential threat to national security. The words hit me like a physical blow. Emily, national security? It was impossible. That's ridiculous, I said. Emily writes code. She's a computer science student. The most dangerous thing she's ever done is hack our neighbor's Wi-Fi password in high school. Agent Torres pulled out a tablet and showed it to my parents. I couldn't see the screen from where I sat, but I watched the color drain from both their faces. Do you recognize this? He asked. Dad nodded slowly. It's the algorithm Emily's been working on for her thesis. This algorithm, Mr. Chen, has been identified as the core component of a sophisticated cyber weapon capable of infiltrating and compromising critical infrastructure systems. Water treatment plants, power grids, hospital networks. In the wrong hands, this code could be used to cause massive civilian casualties. I felt like I was drowning. That can't be right. Emily would never. Your sister, Agent Morrison interrupted, has been in communication with a network of individuals connected to foreign intelligence services. She's been selling information. No. The word came out as a whisper, but I felt like I was screaming. You're wrong. Emily isn't a spy. She's just smart. Intelligence can be weaponized, Miss Chen. Your sister's exceptional abilities have made her a valuable asset to people who don't have America's best interests at heart. Mom finally spoke, her voice barely audible. How long have you been watching us? Long enough to know that Emily isn't the only member of this family with secrets. The way she said it made my skin crawl. I looked at my parents, really looked at them, and saw strangers. Dad's tears had dried, leaving behind an expression I'd never seen before. Hard. Calculating. And Mom. Mom was sitting with perfect posture, her fear replaced by something that looked almost like defiance. I want to see the warrant, Dad said. Agent Morrison handed him the paperwork. As he read, his frown deepened. This is very specific, he murmured. You're not just looking for Emily. You're looking for evidence of, what does this say? Espionage activities conducted by members of the Chen family unit. That's correct. I felt the ground shifting beneath me. What does that mean? Espionage activities by members of the family. No one answered me directly, but Agent Torres stood up. Mr. and Mrs. Chen, we're going to need you to come with us for questioning. Are we under arrest? Mom asked. Not at this time, but we strongly recommend that you cooperate with our investigation. Dad looked at me, and for the first time in my life, I saw real fear in his eyes. Not for himself, but for me. What about our daughter? He asked, nodding toward me. Miss Chen will need to find somewhere else to stay while we process the scene. Do you have family in the area? I shook my head. My grandparents had died when I was young, and we'd never been close with extended family. My friends from high school had scattered to colleges across the country, and my Georgetown friendships were more acquaintances than people I could call in a crisis. There's a hotel about 2 miles from here, Agent Morrison said, not unkindly. We'll be in touch. As my parents were escorted out, not in handcuffs, but flanked by agents in a way that made it clear this wasn't optional, Mom turned back to me. Sweetheart, she said, whatever you hear about us, whatever they tell you, remember that everything we did was to protect you and Emily. The door closed behind them, leaving me alone in my destroyed house with 2 agents who were still cataloging evidence. I went upstairs to pack a bag, my mind reeling. In the span of 4 hours, I'd learned that my sister was potentially a spy, my parents were involved in something called espionage activities, and I was apparently the only member of my family who had no idea what was really going on. Emily's bedroom door was open, Unusual, since she always kept it locked when she wasn't home. I peeked inside and froze. The room was empty. Not just clean, completely empty. No furniture, no personal belongings, no trace that anyone had ever lived there. The walls were freshly painted, and the carpet looked new. It was as if Emily Chun had never existed. The Holiday Inn on Route 7 became my temporary home, paid for by a government credit card that Agent Morrison handed me with the same expression someone might use to give directions to the grocery store. The room smelled like industrial cleaning products in despair, and I spent the first night staring at the popcorn ceiling, trying to make sense of a world that had turned upside down in the span of a single morning. By Thursday, the story had broken on the news. Federal agents arrested 2 Northern Virginia residents in connection with an ongoing espionage investigation. The anchor reported over footage of our house, surrounded by police tape. Sources close to the investigation say the suspects may have been operating as sleeper agents for more than 2 decades. Sleeper agents. The words felt foreign in my mouth when I whispered them to the empty hotel room. My phone had been buzzing constantly. Reporters, classmates, people I barely knew who had somehow gotten my number. I turned it off and walked to the hotel lobby to use the payphone, an ancient relic that seemed appropriate for a conversation about spies and secrets. I called my Aunt Lisa in Seattle, my mother's sister who I hadn't spoken to in 3 years. "Katie!" Her voice was sharp with concern. "Honey, I've been trying to reach you. I saw the news. Are you okay?" The sound of someone using my actual name instead of Miss Chun nearly broke me. "I don't know," I admitted. "Aunt Lisa, did you know?" "About Mom and Dad." The silence stretched so long I thought the connection had dropped. "Lisa!" "Oh, sweetheart." Her voice was thick with something that might have been grief. "I was hoping this day would never come." My legs gave out. I sank into one of the lobby's uncomfortable chairs, the phone cord stretched to its limit. "You knew." "Not everything. But, Katie, your parents aren't who you think they are." The words hit me like ice water. "What do you mean?" "Their real names aren't David and Sarah Chun. I don't even know what their real names are. They showed up in Seattle 23 years ago with new identities, a fabricated history, and a 2-year-old daughter who they claimed was theirs. Emily. She was talking about Emily. "I'm not their daughter," I asked, though even as the words left my mouth, I knew that wasn't right. I looked like my mother, the same dark eyes, the same stubborn chin. Emily, with her pale skin and sharp features, had always been the one who looked adopted. "No, honey, you are. You were born in Seattle, at Swedish Medical. I was there when Sarah went into labor. But Emily..." Lisa paused. "Emily showed up with them. They said she was their daughter, but Katie, that little girl didn't speak English. She spoke what sounded like Russian, and maybe something else. And she was so advanced. Too advanced for a 2-year-old. My mind raced. Emily had always been gifted, but what Lisa was describing sounded like something else entirely. "Who are they really?" I whispered. "I don't know. Your mother, Sarah, or whoever she really is, she never told me. But she loved you, Katie. Whatever else they were involved in, their love for you was real. I could see it every time they visited. After I hung up, I sat in that lobby for 2 hours, watching people come and go. Families on vacation, business travelers, normal people living normal lives. I envied them their ignorance. That evening, Agent Morrison appeared in the lobby. She looked exactly the same as she had the day before. Same severe bun, same neutral expression, same air of someone who knew secrets that could destroy lives. "Miss Chun, how are you holding up?" I almost laughed. "How do you think?" She sat across from me, her movements precise and controlled. "I know this is difficult, but I need to ask you some questions about your family. I don't think I know anything useful. Apparently, I don't know anything about my family at all. You might know more than you realize." She pulled out a small recording device. "Do you mind if I record this?" I shrugged. Nothing seemed to matter anymore. "When you were growing up, did your parents ever have visitors who seemed unusual?" I thought about it. "What do you mean by unusual?" "People who came late at night. People who spoke languages other than English. People who seemed nervous or secretive." "No. We hardly had visitors at all. Mom and Dad kept to themselves mostly." "What about phone calls? Did you ever overhear conversations that seemed strange?" A memory surfaced, dim and half-forgotten. I was maybe 8 years old, sick with the flu, and I'd gotten up in the middle of the night for water. I'd heard Dad on the phone in his study, speaking in what I thought was Spanish, but might have been something else. When he saw me, he quickly hung up and told me to go back to bed. I told Agent Morrison about it. Did this happen often? I don't know. I was a kid. I didn't pay attention to things like that. I paused. Are you going to tell me what they did? What they're accused of? Agent Morrison considered this. Your parents have been living under assumed identities for over 20 years. We believe they were placed here as part of a deep cover operation by a foreign intelligence service. Which service? We're still determining that. But based on the evidence we've collected, we believe they were activated recently to facilitate your sister's activities. Emily's not a spy, I said automatically, though I was no longer sure of anything. Miss Chen, your sister has been in contact with individuals connected to Russian intelligence services. She's been providing them with information about American cyber security vulnerabilities. The algorithm she developed, it wasn't for her thesis. It was commissioned work. The pieces were starting to form a picture I didn't want to see. Emily's secretiveness, her sudden wealth. She bought a new car last year, expensive clothes, had money for things that graduate students shouldn't be able to afford. Her increasing distance from the family. Where is she now? I asked. We believe she's left the country. Her passport was flagged at Dulles International Airport 2 days ago, but by the time we got there, she was gone. Gone. Emily was gone, and I was left behind to clean up the wreckage of a life built on lies. What happens to me now? I asked. Agent Morrison's expression softened almost imperceptibly. That depends. You're not under suspicion, Miss Chen. As far as we can determine, you had no knowledge of your family's activities. But we'll need your cooperation as this investigation continues. Cooperation with what? Your parents have agreed to provide information in exchange for reduced sentences. They've given us some intelligence about their handlers, their methods, their objectives. But there are still gaps in what we know. I stared at her. You want me to help you convict my own parents? I want you to help us understand how deep this network goes and prevent other operations like this one. The recording device sat between us on the coffee table, its red light blinking steadily. I wondered how many other lives had been dissected in hotel lobbies, how many other families had been revealed as elaborate deceptions. I need time to think, I said finally. Agent Morrison nodded and turned off the recorder. I understand. But Miss Chen, Katie, I need you to understand something. Your parents' actions have potentially compromised national security. People could die because of the information your sister provided to foreign agents. I know you love your family, but they made choices that have consequences. After she left, I went back to my room and turned on the news. The story had grown. Reporters were calling it one of the most significant espionage cases in decades. They showed photos of my parents being led into a federal courthouse, their faces grim and unfamiliar. The woman in the photo looked like my mother, but something about her posture was different. Straighter, more defiant, as if the arrest had stripped away a disguise she'd been wearing for 23 years. I realized I was looking at a stranger who had raised me, loved me, and lied to me every single day of my life. The federal courthouse in Alexandria, Virginia, looked like a fortress built to contain secrets. I sat in the parking lot for 20 minutes before finding the courage to walk inside. Agent Morrison had arranged for me to see my parents before their arraignment, a small mercy in an otherwise merciless situation. The meeting room was sterile and windowless, with a metal table bolted to the floor and chairs that had seen too many difficult conversations. When the door opened and my parents walked in, wearing orange jumpsuits and handcuffs, I barely recognized them. Prison had stripped away their suburban camouflage. Dad's shoulders were straighter, his eyes more alert. Mom moved with a grace I'd never noticed before, economical, precise movements that spoke of training I didn't want to think about. Sweetheart, Mom's voice cracked when she saw me. Whatever persona she'd been wearing for 23 years, her love for me was genuine. I could see it in the way her composure nearly broke when our eyes met. We sat across from each other with a guard watching from the corner. The silence stretched until I couldn't stand it anymore. Is any of it real? I asked. Anything at all? Dad David, or whoever he really was, leaned forward as much as his restraints would allow. Our love for you is real. That was never a lie. But everything else was. Mom nodded slowly. Yes. Even your names. Another nod. I prepared for this conversation, but actually hearing it confirmed felt like being gutted. What are your real names? They exchanged a look. Even now, even here, they were still communicating in that wordless way that comes from years of shared deception. My name is Mikhail Volkov, Dad said quietly. Your mother is Katerina Petrova. Russian names. Russian agents. The cliché of it would have been funny if it weren't destroying my life. How long? I asked. We were recruited in Moscow in 1998. Mom, Katerina, said. We were young, idealistic. We thought we were serving a greater purpose. And Emily? The question hung in the air like a loaded weapon. I watched my parents' faces, looking for tells, for truths hidden behind 23 years of practiced lies. Emily was part of the assignment, Dad said finally. She was given to us. Given to you. The words felt strange in my mouth. There are programs, Mom said carefully, glancing at the guard. Children with certain abilities are identified early. Emily was selected for deep placement. I felt sick. Selected for what? To be raised as an American, to integrate completely, and then to use her abilities to serve her true purpose when the time came. Which was? Cyber warfare, Dad said. Emily's mind works differently than most people's. She can see patterns, connections, vulnerabilities in systems that others miss. She was trained from childhood to be a weapon disguised as a gifted student. The room was spinning. And me. You were our choice, Mom said fiercely. The assignment called for a family with 2 children to provide deeper cover. But we could have chosen any child, could have acquired one through official channels. Instead, we chose to have you. Naturally. Because we wanted to be parents, not just handlers. I stared at them, trying to reconcile this revelation with everything I thought I knew about my family. So Emily knew about all of this. Not initially, Dad said. She was activated when she turned 18. Before that, she believed she was American, just like you did. Activated. I repeated the word like it was poison. Like a sleeper cell. Yes. The simple admission broke something inside me. I put my head in my hands and tried not to cry in front of the guard, in front of these people who looked like my parents but were apparently Russian spies who had been lying to me since birth. Why didn't you tell me? I whispered. Because you were never supposed to be part of this, Mom said. You were our normal life, our real life. We wanted to protect you from our world. But Emily wasn't protected. No, Dad said quietly. Emily was the mission. You were our daughter. The distinction should have comforted me, but it didn't. It just made me feel guilty for being loved when Emily had been used. Where is she now? We don't know, Mom said. When she was activated, she was given different handlers. We weren't involved in her operational activities, but you knew what she was doing. We suspected, Dad admitted. When she started coming home with expensive things, when she became secretive about her work, we knew her mission had begun. I thought about Emily's car, her designer clothes, the way she started treating our family dinners like obligations rather than connections. Did she know about you? Your real identities? Yes, Mom said. When she was activated, she was briefed on our situation. She knew we were her handlers for the deep placement phase of her development. So she knew you weren't really her parents. Biologically, no. But we raised her, Katie. We loved her as much as any parents could love a child. I laughed bitterly. Did you, though? Or were you just following orders? The question hurt them. I could see it in their faces. Good. I wanted them to hurt. In the beginning, Dad said slowly, it was part of the assignment. But children have a way of becoming real to you, regardless of the circumstances. By the time Emily started school, by the time she was 6 or 7, she was our daughter in every way that mattered. Except that you were training her to betray the country that raised her. We weren't training her, Mom protested. Her real training happened elsewhere, during summer camps and special programs that we were told were for gifted children. We just provided the cover of a normal family. A normal family, I repeated. Right. The guard shifted in his corner, reminding us that our time was limited. What happens now? I asked. We've agreed to cooperate with the investigation, Dad said. We're providing information about our network, our contacts, our methods. In exchange, we'll likely receive reduced sentences. How reduced? 15 to 20 years, Mom said quietly. The number hit me like a physical blow. By the time they got out, I'd be in my 40s. Middle-aged. They'd miss my entire adult life, my career, my marriage if I ever found someone who could overlook my family history, grandchildren they'd never meet. And Emily, if they catch her, she'll face more serious charges, Dad said. She was an active operative. We were just infrastructure. Just infrastructure, I said numbly. The door opened, and the guard indicated that our time was up. As my parents stood to leave, Mom turned back to me. Katie, there's something else you need to know. I looked up at her, this woman who was my mother and a stranger simultaneously. The house, your college tuition, everything we provided for you, it was all paid for with money from Moscow. You've been living on foreign intelligence funds your entire life. The last piece of my normal life crumbled to dust. Georgetown University felt like a different planet when I returned to classes a week later. Students complained about professors and exams and cafeteria food, problems that seemed impossibly trivial compared to learning that your entire family was a lie constructed by Russian intelligence. I tried to blend in, to pretend that nothing had changed, but isolation followed me like a shadow. How do you make small talk when you're not sure if anything you say is being monitored? How do you trust new people when the people who raised you turned out to be professional liars? Agent Morrison had given me a card with her direct number. Call if you remember anything, she'd said. Or if anyone contacts you. Family, friends, people claiming to know your parents, anyone asking questions about Emily. The call came on a Thursday evening in November. I was in my dorm room, struggling through a paper on Cold War diplomacy that felt uncomfortably relevant to my current situation when my phone rang. The number was blocked. Hello. Is this Katie Chin? The voice was unfamiliar. Older, male, with an accent I couldn't place. Who is this? My name is Peter Kozlov. I believe you know my daughter. I sat up straighter. I don't know anyone named Kozlov. You know her by another name. Emily. The world tilted sideways. I gripped the phone tighter. Emily's not your daughter. Biologically, no. But I have been her true handler for the past 4 years. Her real family. My hand shook as I reached for Agent Morrison's card. What do you want? To meet with you. To explain some things that your parents could not. My parents told me everything. He laughed, but there was no humor in it. Child, your parents told you what they knew. But they were small players in a much larger game. There are things about Emily, about yourself, that they never understood. About myself. You are not as uninvolved as you believe. The line went dead. I stared at the phone for a full minute before dialing Agent Morrison's number with shaking fingers. Morrison! Someone just called me. He said his name was Peter Kozlov and that he was Emily's handler. Where are you right now? My dorm room. Stay there. Don't go anywhere. Don't talk to anyone. I'm sending agents to your location. Agent Morrison, he said something about me. He said I wasn't as uninvolved as I thought. The silence on the other end was longer than I liked. We'll be there in 20 minutes. The agents who arrived weren't Morrison's usual team. These were younger, more tech-focused, and they brought equipment I didn't recognize. They swept my room for bugs, examined my laptop, and asked me to repeat the conversation word for word. Peter Kozlov, one of them muttered, typing rapidly on a tablet. Known alias for Pyotr Kozlovsky, GRU Colonel. He's been on our watch list for years. GRU? I asked. Russian military intelligence. More aggressive than SVR, less subtle. If he's Emily's handler, this operation is bigger than we initially thought. Agent Morrison arrived an hour later, looking grim. We're moving you, she said without preamble. Moving me where? Safe house. At least until we figure out what Kozlov wants with you. But I don't know anything. I've told you everything I can remember. Katie, your parents were SVR assets. Low level, but long term. Emily was also SVR, operating under deep cover. But if GRU is involved now, if they're making contact with you directly, it means there's something about this case we're missing. She paused, studying my face. I need to ask you something, and I need you to think carefully before you answer. I nodded. In all the years you live with your family, did you ever have any training? Anything that seemed unusual at the time but might make sense now. I opened my mouth to say no, then stopped. A memory was surfacing, dim and half forgotten, but growing clearer as I focused on it. Summer camp, I said slowly. When I was 10 and 11, my parents sent me to this place in upstate New York. Camp Birchwood, I think it was called. What kind of camp? They said it was for academically gifted children. But it wasn't like normal summer camp. We didn't do arts and crafts or swim in lakes. We had classes, language classes, problem-solving exercises, pattern recognition games. Agent Morrison exchanged looks with her team. What languages? Russian, I said, the word feeling strange on my tongue. And Mandarin. They said it was to prepare us for a global economy, but I trailed off as more memories surfaced. There were other things, too. Memory exercises. They would show us pictures or documents for a few seconds, then ask us to recall every detail hours later. How many summers? Just 2. After that, my parents said the camp was too expensive, that I should do local programs instead. I looked up at Agent Morrison. But Emily went for 5 summers, until she was 15. Did you and Emily ever discuss what happened at these camps? Not really. Emily said her experiences were different than mine, more advanced. She made it sound like I hadn't been smart enough for the higher-level programs. The old resentment flared briefly, then died under the weight of current circumstances. Agent Morrison was typing notes on her phone. Katie, I need you to try to remember everything you can about those summers. The counselors, the other kids, the specific activities. Everything. The Safe House was a nondescript townhouse in Arlington, indistinguishable from dozens of others on the tree-lined street. It had the impersonal feel of a hotel room designed to be forgotten, with bland furniture and no personal touches. I spent the next 3 days in debriefing sessions, dragging up memories of Camp Birchwood that I'd buried so deep I'd almost convinced myself they were dreams. The more I remembered, the clearer the picture became. The camp had been a recruitment and training facility. The counselors had been intelligence professionals, not college students earning summer money. The other children, there had been maybe 30 of us each summer, had all been exceptional in different ways. Some were mathematical prodigies, others showed unusual linguistic abilities, still others demonstrated what the counselors called social intelligence. They were identifying potential assets, Agent Morrison explained during one of our sessions. Children who could be developed over time, placed in key positions as adults. But I was never contacted again after I left the camp. Because you didn't meet their criteria. Your test scores, your psychological evaluations, whatever they were looking for, you didn't have it. It should have been insulting, but I felt only relief. And Emily did. Emily was exceptional even by their standards. That's why she was selected for deep placement with your parents instead of being returned to Russia for formal training. The revelation that my summer camps had been intelligence operations run by foreign agents should have been the final shock in a series of life-altering discoveries. Instead, it felt like finding the last piece of a puzzle I'd been unconsciously trying to solve for years. So I was being evaluated too, I said. My whole childhood. In a way, yes. But Katie, the fact that they passed you over might have saved your life. Emily was valuable enough to them that they're still trying to protect their investment. You were just collateral, which means you're not valuable enough to kill, but you're also not valuable enough to protect if things go wrong. That evening, alone in the safe house with only a taciturn federal marshal for company, I tried to call my Aunt Lisa. The phone rang, and rang before going to voicemail. I tried again an hour later. Still no answer. By the 3rd attempt, I was worried enough to call Agent Morrison. I can't reach my aunt, I told her. She always answers her phone. The silence on the other end was too long. Agent Morrison, Katie, I need you to sit down. I was already sitting, but I gripped the arms of a chair anyway. What happened? Lisa Petrova was found dead in her Seattle apartment yesterday morning. Apparent suicide. The words hit me like ice water. That's impossible. She was fine when I talked to her. She was the only family I had left who wasn't in prison. I'm sorry. I know this is difficult. How did she? Overdose. Prescription medication. She left a note apologizing for the pain her family had caused. I stared at the bland painting on the wall across from me, trying to process this new loss. Aunt Lisa, who had seemed so normal, so far removed from the world of spies and secrets. Was she involved too? I asked quietly. We don't think so. But Katie, we don't think her death was a suicide. The room seemed to tilt. What do you mean? The timing is too convenient. Lisa was one of the few people who could corroborate details about your parents' early years in America. If someone wanted to eliminate loose ends, she didn't need to finish the sentence. I understood. They killed her because she talked to me. We think it's possible. I closed my eyes and tried to breathe. One phone call to my aunt had potentially signed her death warrant. Am I safe here? I asked. As safe as we can make you. But Katie, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me. I opened my eyes. What? Is there anything else? Any other family members? Any other connections to your parents or Emily that you haven't mentioned? I thought about it carefully. No. It was just us. We didn't have close relationships with anyone else. What about boyfriends? Emily's boyfriends from high school or college. Emily never dated. She said relationships were a distraction from her studies. Another lie, apparently. Or maybe not a lie, so much as training. What about you? Anyone you've been serious with? I almost laughed. My longest relationship lasted 3 months. It's hard to get close to people when you're constantly being compared to your perfect sister. Agent Morrison nodded, making notes. We're going to need to interview anyone you've been involved with, just to be safe. There's really only one person, I said. Alex Reyes. We dated sophomore year. Where is he now? Still at Georgetown, I think. Pre-med. I paused. You don't really think they'd go after people I barely know, do you? Katie, your aunt was killed for having one conversation with you. We can't take any chances. That night, I lay awake in the strange bed, staring at the ceiling and thinking about the widening circle of destruction that seemed to follow my family. My parents were in prison, Emily was a fugitive, my aunt was dead, and now even casual acquaintances from my past were potentially in danger. I thought about Alex, with his easy smile and terrible jokes about organic chemistry. He'd been kind to me, patient with my insecurities about always being the other Chin daughter. I hadn't thought about him in months, but now the idea that he might be in danger because of a connection to me made my stomach turn. At 3 a.m., I gave up on sleep and went to the kitchen for water. The marshal on duty, Agent Parker, looked up from his crossword puzzle. Can't sleep. I shook my head. Too much to think about. It gets easier, he said. The not knowing, the constant worry. You develop a tolerance for it. How long have you been doing this? 15 years. Started right after September 11th. I sat at the kitchen table across from him. Do you ever wonder if it's worth it? All the surveillance, the safe houses, the constant suspicion. He considered the question seriously. Sometimes. But then I think about the alternative. Your sister's algorithm, for instance, in the wrong hands, that could shut down hospitals, contaminate water supplies, cause plane crashes. When you think about it that way, a little paranoia seems like a reasonable price to pay. Do you think they'll catch her? Eventually. People like Emily, they're too valuable to stay hidden forever. Someone will try to use her, and when they do, we'll be watching. And my parents? They'll serve their time, probably in minimum security, since they're cooperating. They'll be old when they get out, but they'll survive. I nodded, though the timeline still seemed impossibly long. Agent Parker, I said. What happens to me when this is all over? When Emily is caught and the investigation is closed? He looked up from his crossword. What do you mean? I mean, how do you build a normal life when everyone knows your family were Russian spies? How do you trust people? How do you get married, have kids, when there's always going to be that question mark over your head? He was quiet for a long moment. You do it one day at a time, he said finally. You find people who care more about who you are than where you came from. And you learn to forgive yourself for things that were never your fault. It was good advice, but sitting in that sterile kitchen at 3 a.m., surrounded by federal agents and wondering if my childhood friend was going to be murdered for once taking me to dinner, forgiveness felt like a luxury I couldn't afford. The call came at dawn on a Tuesday, 3 weeks into my stay at the safe house. Agent Morrison's voice was tense with the kind of controlled urgency that meant something significant had happened. We found Emily. I sat up in bed, instantly awake. Where? Montreal. She was trying to board a flight to Moscow using a Canadian passport. Border agents flagged her for additional screening, and she was detained. Relief flooded through me, followed immediately by a more complex emotion I couldn't name. Emily was caught, which meant the nightmare was moving toward some kind of resolution. But she was also my sister, and despite everything, the thought of her in custody made my chest tight. Is she okay? She's fine. Angry, but fine. Katie, she's asking to see you. The words hit me like a physical blow. Me? Why? She says she has information that will only be shared if you're present during her debriefing. I swung my legs over the side of the bed, my mind racing. What kind of information? She won't say. But given the scope of this investigation, we can't ignore the possibility that she knows about other operations, other assets. Your presence might be the key to preventing additional damage to national security. Or it might be a trap. That's possible too, which is why the decision has to be yours. I stared out the bedroom window at the suburban street below. A mother was walking her toddler to a minivan, the kind of ordinary scene that had once been my entire world. If I say yes, what happens? We fly you to Montreal under heavy security. You meet with Emily in a controlled environment, with agents present. We record everything. Then you come back here. And if I say no, we continue the investigation without her cooperation. We might lose valuable intelligence, but your safety remains our priority. I closed my eyes and tried to imagine facing Emily again. The sister who had been the golden child, who I'd envied and admired and never really known at all. I'll do it, I said. The federal building in Montreal was a concrete fortress that seemed designed to crush hope. I sat in yet another sterile room, this one with bulletproof glass separating me from where Emily would sit. Agent Morrison was beside me, along with 2 Canadian intelligence officers and a woman introduced as a psychological evaluation specialist. When they brought Emily in, I barely recognized her. Gone was the composed, perfectly put-together young woman who had always seemed to float above ordinary concerns. This Emily looked thin, exhausted, with dark circles under her eyes and her hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. She wore an orange jumpsuit that made her skin look sallow. But her eyes were the same, sharp, calculating, missing nothing. She picked up the phone on her side of the glass. I did the same. Hi, Katie. Hi. My voice sounded strange in my own ears. You look older. It's been a difficult month. She smiled, but there was no warmth in it. I imagine it has. Learning that your entire life has been a lie tends to age people. Is that what you wanted to tell me? That my life was a lie? No. Emily leaned forward, her eyes intense. I wanted to tell you that it wasn't. I frowned. What do you mean? Our parents' love for you was real, Katie. Their pride in your accomplishments, their worry when you were sick, their joy when you succeeded. All of that was genuine. They may have been living false identities, but their feelings for you were the most authentic thing in their lives. The words should have been comforting, but something in Emily's tone made them feel like a weapon. And their feelings for you? I asked. They cared about me, but I was always the mission, never the daughter. Do you know what it's like to grow up knowing that every hug, every bedtime story, every birthday party is part of an assignment? I stared at her through the glass. For the first time in my life, I felt sorry for Emily rather than envious of her. Is that why you did it? The spying. I did it because it's what I was trained to do from the time I could walk. But also, she paused, choosing her words carefully. I did it because I wanted to matter to someone. The handlers who recruited me, they made me feel valuable in a way our parents never could. Valuable enough to betray your own country. Emily's expression hardened. My country is Russia, Katie. It always has been. America was just the place where I happened to grow up. The casual way she said it, as if 20 years of life in Virginia meant nothing, sent a chill down my spine. So what information do you have that's so important I had to fly to Montreal to hear it? Emily glanced at the agents listening to our conversation, then looked back at me. There are others, she said. Other families like ours. Deep placement operations that have been running for decades. Agent Morrison leaned forward. How many others? I know of at least 6 active cells on the East Coast alone. Families with children who've been placed in universities, government agencies, technology companies. The program I was part of. It's much larger than you realize. We need names, one of the Canadian officers said. I'll give you names, Emily said, still looking at me. But only if Katie agrees to something first. My stomach clenched. What? I want you to deliver a message to our parents. Emily, I can't. Not through official channels. The next time you visit them, I want you to tell them something for me. Agent Morrison was shaking her head. Miss Chen, any communication with the prisoners has to go through proper channels. Then you won't get the information you need, Emily said calmly. And more operations will continue. More damage will be done. How many American secrets are you willing to let slip away to preserve bureaucratic protocol? The room fell silent. I could feel the weight of the decision pressing down on me. What's the message? I asked. Emily smiled, a real smile this time, sad and grateful. Tell them I understand now. Tell them that even though I was the mission, they gave me something Moscow never could. They taught me what it felt like to be part of a family, even if it was just pretend. Her voice cracked slightly. And tell them that when I'm in prison, I won't be thinking about the handlers who used me or the country that discarded me. I'll be thinking about Saturday morning pancakes and help with homework, and the way Dad used to check my closet for monsters, even when I was too old to be afraid. I felt tears burning my eyes. Emily, those memories are the only real things I have, Katie. And they're real because of you. Because of me. Because loving you taught them how to love me too. Even if I was just an assignment at first, you made them into actual parents. You gave me a family. The weight of her words settled over me like lead. All these years, I'd resented being the ordinary daughter while Emily got all the attention. But according to Emily, being ordinary, being genuinely loved rather than strategically managed, had been the greater gift. I'll deliver your message, I said quietly. Emily nodded and turned to Agent Morrison. Get your pen ready. I have a lot of names to give you. 3 hours later, I sat in a charter jet flying back to Virginia, my head spinning with the information Emily had provided. 6 more families, 12 more children placed in strategic positions, a network of assets that extended into the Pentagon, the CDC, NASA, and major technology companies. She just gave us the biggest intelligence coup in decades, Agent Morrison said, settling into the seat across from me. This will take years to fully investigate. Will it help her? In court, I mean. It should. Cooperation on this scale usually results in significantly reduced sentences. I nodded, though I wasn't sure how I felt about that. Emily was still a traitor, still someone who had sold American secrets to foreign agents. But she was also my sister, and the broken person I'd seen today seemed more like a victim than a villain. Agent Morrison, I said, what happens to the other families? The ones Emily identified? We'll investigate them the same way we investigated yours. Surveillance, evidence gathering, arrests when we have sufficient probable cause. And their children? The ones who don't know. She was quiet for a moment. We'll try to handle it as carefully as possible. But yes, there will be more people like you, young adults who discover that their entire lives have been built on lies. I looked out the window at the clouds below. Somewhere down there, other families were having dinner, helping with homework, arguing about curfews, completely unaware that federal agents were watching, planning, preparing to destroy their worlds in the name of national security. How do you do it? I asked. How do you sleep at night knowing that your job involves destroying families? Agent Morrison was quiet for so long that I thought she wasn't going to answer. Because the alternative is worse, she said finally. Because foreign intelligence services don't care about the families they destroy in pursuit of their objectives. At least we try to minimize the collateral damage. Collateral damage. That's what all the children in these deep placement operations were. Not victims, not innocent parties, just collateral damage in a war most people didn't even know was being fought. The plane banked toward Dulles Airport, and I could see the lights of the Washington metropolitan area spreading out below us like a circuit board. Millions of people living their lives, trusting that the people around them were who they claimed to be. Most of them were right. But some of them were living with Russian spies, North Korean agents, Chinese intelligence assets, or any number of other threats hiding in plain sight. And somewhere in those millions of lights were federal agents working to identify and neutralize those threats creating more collateral damage with every investigation. When we landed, Agent Morrison walked me to the car that would take me back to the safe house. "Katie," she said as I was about to get in, "I want you to know that what you did today, agreeing to see Emily, helping us get that information, it took courage. And it will save lives." I nodded, though I didn't feel courageous. I felt tired and sad and angry at a world where children could be turned into weapons and families could be destroyed in the name of national security. "How much longer do I have to stay in protective custody?" I asked. "A few more weeks, probably, until we can assess the information Emily provided and determine if there are any remaining threats. And then you go back to your life, or what's left of it." As the car pulled away from the airport, I thought about what going back to my life would actually mean. My parents would be in prison for the next 15 to 20 years. Emily would likely receive a shorter sentence due to her cooperation, but she'd still be gone for years. My aunt was dead. My house had been seized as evidence. My college tuition had been paid with foreign intelligence money. I had no family, no home, and no clear path forward. The life I was supposed to go back to had never really existed in the first place. But maybe that was okay. Maybe starting from nothing was better than building on a foundation of lies. 2 years later, I stood in the small apartment I'd rented in Alexandria, packing boxes for another move. Not because I was running from anything this time, but because I'd been accepted to a graduate program at Northwestern University. International relations with a focus on intelligence studies. Apparently, when your family turns out to be Russian spies, academic advisors assume you have unique insights into the field. They weren't wrong. The apartment was sparse but clean, furnished with secondhand furniture and a few pieces I'd managed to recover from our old house after the FBI finally released it. Most of our belongings had been deemed evidence or sold to pay legal fees, but I'd gotten back my childhood photo albums and some of my mother's jewelry. The photos were strange to look at now. Birthday parties and family vacations that I remembered as happy times, but which I now knew were elaborate performances. Still, Emily had been right about one thing. The love in those pictures was real, even if everything else was constructed. A knock on the door interrupted my packing. I looked through the peephole and saw Agent Morrison standing in the hallway, holding a manila envelope. "Rebecca," I said, opening the door. Over the past 2 years, our relationship had evolved from interrogator and subject to something approaching friendship. "What brings you by?" "I have some news," she said, stepping inside. "About Emily." I gestured for her to sit on the couch while I made tea. We developed this ritual over the course of the investigation. Rebecca would update me on developments in the case, and I would try to help her understand the family dynamics that might be relevant. "She's being released next month," Rebecca said without preamble. I nearly dropped the tea kettle. Released? But she was supposed to serve at least 5 years. Her cooperation led to the disruption of 9 separate intelligence operations and the arrest of 23 foreign agents. The judge decided that her continued assistance was more valuable than her continued incarceration. I sat down hard on the chair across from her. "Where will she go?" "Witness protection, initially. New identity, relocation, supervised reintegration. She'll be monitored for the rest of her life, but she'll be free." "And my parents?" "Still serving their sentences, but their cooperation has been valuable too. They might be eligible for early release in 8 to 10 years instead of the full 15 to 20. I nodded, trying to process this information. The idea of Emily being free while our parents remained in prison seemed wrong somehow, but I understood the logic. Emily's intelligence had been more operationally valuable. "There's something else," Rebecca said. "Emily wants to see you before she enters the program. She'll be in Washington for debriefing next week. I don't know if that's a good idea. She specifically asked me to tell you that she doesn't expect forgiveness or a relationship. She just wants to apologize in person." I sipped my tea and considered it. The last time I'd seen Emily, she'd been behind bulletproof glass in a Canadian federal facility. The idea of meeting her as a free person, even temporarily, was unsettling. "What would you do?" I asked. "If you were me." Rebecca was quiet for a moment. "I think I'd want closure. You're about to start a new life in Chicago, new school, new identity. This might be your last chance to put the Emily chapter to rest. Or it might reopen wounds that are finally starting to heal. That's possible too." I looked around the apartment I was leaving behind at the life I'd managed to build from the wreckage of my family's exposure. It wasn't much, but it was mine. Clean, honest, real. Okay, I said. I'll see her. The meeting was arranged for the following Thursday at a secure facility in Quantico. Emily looked different again, healthier than she had in Montreal, but older too. Prison, and the weight of her choices had carved lines around her eyes that made her look closer to 30 than 25. We sat across from each other at a metal table, with Rebecca and another agent present but far enough away to give us the illusion of privacy. Hi, Katie. Hi. We stared at each other for a moment, two sisters who had grown up in the same house but lived completely different lives. You look good, Emily said finally. Settled. I'm trying to be. Rebecca told me you're going to graduate school. Northwestern is a good program. How would you know? Emily smiled ruefully. I researched it when I was applying to colleges, before my real purpose became clear. I thought about studying international relations myself. Instead of computer science was never my choice. It was what my handlers needed me to study. She paused. I sometimes wonder who I might have been if I'd been able to choose my own path. The sadness in her voice was unexpected. I'd always seen Emily as someone who had everything figured out, who moved through the world with purpose and confidence. The idea that she'd been as trapped by circumstances as I'd felt was jarring. You can choose now, I said. When you get out, when you're in the program. You can be whoever you want to be. Can I, though? When your entire life has been about serving someone else's agenda, how do you even know who you really are? It was a question I'd been wrestling with myself. If my entire childhood had been constructed by Russian intelligence, if my family relationships had been partially fabricated, what parts of my identity were actually mine? I think you figure it out one decision at a time, I said. You choose what to eat for breakfast, what books to read, what movies to watch. Small choices that don't matter to anyone but you. And eventually, the real you emerges. Emily nodded slowly. Is that what you've been doing? Trying to. It's harder than it sounds. I imagine it is. She leaned forward slightly. Katie, I need you to know that I'm sorry. Not just for the spying, but for everything. For being the reason you grew up feeling like you weren't good enough. For taking attention and resources that should have been yours. For bringing this chaos into your life. You were just a kid too, I said, surprising myself with the words. You didn't choose to be placed with our parents any more than I chose to be born to them. No, but I chose to become active when I was 18. I could have refused, could have found a way to disappear or defect. Instead, I chose to honor my training and fulfill my mission. Why? Emily was quiet for a long moment. Because it was the only thing I'd ever been good at that felt like it belonged to me. Being a daughter was an act, being a student was cover, being American was a lie. But being an intelligence asset, that felt real. And now I know that it was just another kind of performance. The handlers who recruited me, they didn't care about me any more than Moscow cared about the information I provided. I was useful to them, nothing more. I studied her face, looking for the calculation and control that had always seemed to define her. Instead, I saw exhaustion and something that might have been grief. What will you do? In witness protection? I don't know yet. The program will help me establish a new identity, find work, integrate into a community. But beyond that, she shrugged. I've never made plans that weren't part of someone else's agenda. Maybe that's where you start, I said, with plans that are just yours. When our time was up, Emily stood to leave. At the door, she turned back. Katie, I know this probably doesn't mean much, but I want you to know that you were the best part of growing up in that house. Watching you be genuinely yourself, seeing you struggle with normal problems and celebrate normal victories, it taught me what authentic humanity looked like. I wasn't authentic, I protested. I was pretending to be confident when I was insecure, pretending to be happy when I was resentful. But those feelings were real. Your insecurity, your resentment, your love for our parents despite everything, that was all genuinely yours. You weren't performing for anyone. You were just being human. She smiled sadly. I always envied you for that. After she left, I sat in the empty conference room for a few minutes, processing the conversation. Rebecca eventually joined me. How do you feel? She asked. Strange, I said honestly. For 2 years, I've been angry at Emily for destroying our family. But talking to her now, I think we were both victims in different ways. That's a very mature perspective. Or maybe I'm just tired of being angry. It's exhausting, carrying that much resentment. Rebecca nodded. What will you do if she tries to contact you again? After she's in the program? I considered the question. I don't know. Maybe nothing. Maybe we're better off as strangers. Or maybe you're better off as people who understand each other's damage. 3 days later, I finished packing my apartment and loaded everything I owned into a rental truck. As I drove toward Chicago and whatever life waited for me there, I thought about identity and authenticity and the difference between the person you're trained to be and the person you choose to become. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Good luck in Chicago. I hope you find what you're looking for. E. I stared at the message for a moment, then deleted it and kept driving. Behind me, Washington, D.C. disappeared in the rearview mirror. The city where I'd learned that everything I thought I knew about my family was a lie, where I'd watched my parents get arrested and my sister revealed as a spy, where I'd spent 2 years trying to rebuild an identity from scratch. Ahead of me was Chicago, Northwestern University, and the chance to build something real on a foundation I was laying myself. It wasn't the life I'd planned, but it was mine. Finally, completely, authentically mine. And for the first time in 2 years, that felt like enough. If you liked this story, leave your opinion in the comments and, of course, leave a like and subscribe. Turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any videos. Big hug and see you soon.